This Experts at Work webinar, which is entitled Reinventing Your Skills Strategy. It's sessions for members of all three of our networks. We're recording this session, as I say, and welcome to Sharron Ford, Deputy Director, People Capability, and Jane Squire, Head of Learning, Talent and Development at the Office for National Statistics, who are taking us through how they rethought their skills strategy, making it more agile, more inclusive, and more directly impactful on the business. Thanks both for doing this, it's much appreciated. There's no breakout rooms for this one. We'll send everyone the slides afterwards. There's a hard finish at 2:45 p.m, so plenty of time for questions. And do send us those questions and suggestions on the chat throughout as well. I'll keep an eye on those. If you could possibly put yourselves on mute for now, if you would, thank you ever so much. And Sharron and Jane, over to you.
Fantastic. And if the conversations get too complicated, we have our director with us today as well, Philippa, so we will be able to delegate upwards. So I'm Sharron. Hi, great to be here, and thank you for having us. I'm just going to set some context and then hand over to Jane, who is the architect of a lot of this. So Jane, if I could ask you to move on a slide, please. We had a bit of a perfect storm happening at all the same time. So our perfect storm was we had an acknowledgement that we had a lot of shadow functions in the organisation, and we needed to look at those and look at the type of work they were doing to make sure that there was a real democratization of learning, so that people were actually accessing the learning they needed to access, and it wasn't about which bit of the business they sat in, and that they had the same experience as everyone else. So we needed to flush out the shadow functions. We also realized that we were asking the organization to doing a learning needs analysis every year, and they absolutely loathed it. It was time consuming. And then when we did some research on it, we discovered that year on year, actually, it was telling us exactly the same thing. So we took to People Committee and we said, you know, do we actually feel that this is valid? Do we actually want to continue doing this? Because we want to take this as a baseline. So People Committee concurred with us and said, no, let's not do that, because where we thought the real investment of our time should be was actually in horizon scanning. So having a look at our future scanning, what the needs of the organisation were going to be and how actually we were going to meet those. So hopefully, Jane, it hasn't moved on for me. Hopefully it's moved on for everyone else to the next slide. You'll be able, or if not, I shall just tell you. So we moved from a shadow function type of activity to a reorganization. So our reorganization means that we need to both redeploy people across the organization and deploy them to area of highest need. And that potentially means that people need to be reskilled. So how do we get that focus on getting people acquiring skills rather than thinking about them sitting where they are in a sort of jobs for life type activity? We then wanted to move from a face-to-face learning approach to a blended learning. Now that cultural shift has been really difficult. So we've really struggled with that because we have an organisation that is very used to that high touch face-to-face. So we needed to move people into that flow of work, lifetime acquisition of skills. And we've done a lot of things to support that. We've put a wide e-learning offering in place that we've actually built skills pathways that help people navigate. So we went from traditional learning needs analysis to horizon scanning. We still use PDP data. We don't use it, however, to do a full learning needs analysis. We look at it to make sure that our future provision is in place. And we've gone from measuring satisfaction into measuring impact. So this has all been quite embryonic. We've done all of this in the last year. So Jane, if I could get you to move the slides along again, please. So where are we today? We have a strategic resourcing model that looks at deploying people to the highest priority, and that means they need to be underpinned with skills. So we talk very much about attract, develop, deploy, and we are very much in the develop space, the work that Jane and I do. We have a very clear service provision. So that means that we are future-proofing the organisation and we're ensuring that our investment in delivery of skills is in the right place. It is a combination of what do people need today and what do people need tomorrow. It's a bit of a balancing act in terms of making sure that we get that right. And that's the reason that we actually measure that, to make sure that we are delivering. And we're using technology really extensively. So ServiceNow, for those of you who have used it, is a process flow. And if anyone wants a new learning intervention, we now have a ServiceNow process that they go through and some SLAs that stand behind that, that allows us to keep our focus on what are the key deliverables of the organization, as opposed to sometimes what happens is who shouts the loudest. And if we can move to slide 4, please. Stakeholder engagement was really important for us. I describe ONS as nerd central. We are wall-to-wall analysts. So anything that we do, we have to be incredibly robust in our thinking. So talking to all of our analysts, we had to provide a bibliography of the types of places that we'd looked, the types of organizations we'd looked at, the types of research that we had done, to make sure that our analysts had faith in us, that we were horizon scanning, we were being evidence-based, we were being data-based, and our thinking was really robust. We have a people committee that do the governance of all people activity, and we were able to take our new approach to people committee and get it endorsed at that meeting as well. So that's the context that we were operating in, and People Committee did endorse our approach, and as a consequence of that, we now have an approach that says skills that count. So I'm now going to hand over to Jane.
Thank you, Sharon. So you should all be looking at slide 5. So hopefully that's all working for you now. So in the context of everything that Sharon's just said, I was then tasked with looking at how we completely reposition our skills approach to the organisation. So this is us setting the scene for how we're going to approach skills, development, learning, talent, all the things that sit underneath my remit. Position that within the organisation strategically and to our senior stakeholders, but also make it something that's accessible to all of our employees so that they can understand how they fit into this overarching skills strategy. We are the ONS. I did call it skills that count, and it was deliberate because we do like to count things. Anyone who's ever done the census, you have been counted. So skills that count is our approach. The 4 bullets that you can see underneath there are radical, ambitious, inclusive, and sustainable. And they are the 4 pillars into which we pin all of our approaches in ONS. So these have not been made up by me. These existed in the organisation. And it made sense to hang our skills approach to these 4 key pillars and make my offer and the offer of our skills development pathways resonate with these. So as you can see, we've got radical there. So that's about building in agility and about making sure that we can respond to the future needs. We're all in a changing landscape. The skills we need tomorrow are going to be vastly different. We're seeing much more demand for things like cloud computing and AI than we would have done, 10 years ago when that was all science fiction. So it's about making sure that we are able to adapt to that, harnessing all our new technologies. So again, with skills and learning development, it's about using the platforms that work for people, being as interactive as possible. Gone are the days where, we would all pitch up in a meeting room and, have learning delivered to us. It's much more interactive. It's much more blended these days. So using the technology that we can to give people a really immersive experience. The culture of self-directed skills improvement is very much getting people to own their development and own it in conjunction with their heads of profession and their line managers to make sure that they are driving their careers and we are giving them the tools to do so. Under the ambitious, again, future skills, which we horizon scan. Sharon's already touched on that. So looking ahead to what will be required and validating that with the business, because we've got an awful lot of technical experts who are better able to help us shape that development. This is not the world according to me and my team. This is very much about working with the business to shape what that future skills requirement is going to look like. Strategic partnerships with the academic institutions. That's not just us talking to universities. We're really diversifying our intake groups. So yes, we have some strategic partnerships with places like Cardiff University, and we're building them with Southampton as well. But we also work really closely with Careers Wales, who are helping us shape a more inclusive approach and go into schools, for example, with lower socioeconomic background students, free school meals, higher just a better diversity of population to make sure that we are recruiting the society that we serve, essentially. So really going in and really trying to diversify our workforce. Sorry, I can't actually see that slide because I've got it really small on my page. So I'm just going to increase that for me. So the data, of course, again, we are ONS. So we really want to use our data to identify our skills requirements. And again, that's partly using our PDP data, mining what people tell us. Inclusive, the investment in our current workforce, but also our future workforce. So apprenticeships, T-levels, building our next generation of employees, but also making sure that that skills offer is equitable to all our current employees. Yes, we're doing positive action pathways and positive action programs for our underrepresented groups, but also with that, building leaders who can be inclusive. Sharron has heard me talk a lot about it, and so forgive me for saying it again, Sharron. We will absolutely provide positive action for people who are underrepresented at all levels of the organisation. But in order for that to really work, we also need to create the culture in which they can thrive. It's not just positive action. It's about making sure that everybody has an inclusive approach. So that one I will continue to bang the drum at. And you can tell I feel really passionate about that because that's when my hands start moving. And sustainable is our final pillar. So the skills pathways to develop or switch to is about us having that agile workforce again. I always think of this in the context of 20 years ago when I joined the Ministry of Defence, we still had a typing pool. As we all got computers and things put on our desks, that the need for that typing pool moved, and those typists went elsewhere and they were reskilled into other parts of the organisation. We're always going to have bits of our organisation where the skills need moves and shifts, and so it's about providing opportunities for people to switch careers or to move into high demand areas. Data analysis, we're always going to need more of those, so helping people really go there. Again, that links back to some of our own talent, giving them a pathway into the business and then pointing in the direction of where we need them to go. The digital learning, again, that falls under our sustainable banner because, again, we are not just traipsing around the country going to various learning interventions. We are doing it much more like this, much more virtually. It's a more sustainable way of delivering learning, but it's also more inclusive because we don't have to rely on people to take a whole day out to travel somewhere, miss the school run, for example, or if you've got mobility impairments, you might not be able to get public transport to a training course. This is far, far more inclusive and a far more sustainable way of delivering learning. And again, the final point, leaders who can absolutely deliver and embed that change. So I appreciate I've laboured that slide quite a lot, but I think it's really important to understand the way in which we've taken those 4 headings and really, really translated that into our learning offer. One of the key principles for me was about making this measurable. And again, Sharron touched upon the fact that we are moving away from measuring people's satisfaction with a learning offer to measuring the impact of it. So again, I hark back to 20 odd years in this space, going along to training courses, ticking that, you know, the presenters were great, the coffee was a bit cold, the room was a bit mouldy. That's the old sort of happy sheet approach. Yes, absolutely. So we absolutely can measure course satisfaction. What we need to measure is the impact. And that was the point that Sharron was touching on. But also we're going to measure the impact of the skills approach, because otherwise this would just be another document, wouldn't it? So I've given you here an example of our measures under Radical. So you can see here we've got success measures and we've got outcomes. So the aims I've already run through. Your success measures there are about making sure that, you know, if we've got an agile workforce, well, how quickly are we redeploying them? deploy, develop, we were talking about earlier. We are very much in the develop space, but an awful lot of what we do enables people to deploy. So if we're able to rapidly redeploy people when their career changes or when their project comes to a close, then we've got a very agile workforce. So we're going to build some measures in to measure that. Our people survey scores are a sort of temperature check. Anybody that's a member of the civil service will know that once a year we have an annual people survey, and there's some really good measures in that we can use about people's approaches and attitudes to how they feel they can develop their career. So we're using those measures. The new technology is about making sure that we've got online solutions for most of our learning requirements, and that we are really pushing people towards using those online tools, and we're exploiting the maximum potential in that space. And again, the self-directed skills improvement, the PDP completion, making sure that people understand why a PDP, personal development plan, if I haven't spelt it out, apologies, why that's important, and capturing that data. And our outcomes there are on the far right-hand side. So people being able to deploy, learning in the flow of work as part of our culture, colleagues who own their own development, and that we use that MI to shape the curriculum. So that's just one example, and I'm sure that you will get the full document shared with you after this, and you'll be able to see all of our various measures against the other principles, but it's really boiling it down into what the impact is. As I said, a lot of this document is about our strategic approach to skills, but we also wanted to make it all things to all people and help our employees, our colleagues, understand how their personal development plans feed into our skills requirements. So how do they help us shape that picture? And a lot of the feedback we get from people when they're thinking about their development, well, is it, I don't know where to start. So we've included in the document some principles for them to start building their personal development plan are, and they boil down to professional, self, and team. What professional skills do I need to develop my career and the journey in which I'm on? What do I need for myself? Be that things like resilience or increasing my knowledge of other people, being a better colleague, a better team member, some of the inclusion things we've talked about. So what can I do to develop me? And what can I do to develop either my team or help develop as part of a team? So that's for managers to be more inclusive, that's for team members to be more collegiate and more collaborative. So thinking about things in those principles to help them boil down, well, what are the learnings that I need to do to implement to meet those three criteria? Trying to keep it really simple for people. And the other set of key principles are the way in which people do learning. So they are timely, relevant, and accessible. So doing it in the flow of work. So I'm a great Googler. If I don't know how to do something, and pivot tables seem to be my nemesis, I will often Google, how do I? I can't tell you how many times during a day I Google, how do I do this? How do I do that? That's me learning in the flow of work. One day, pivot tables might actually stick in my brain, but until they do, I shall continue to upskill and learn as I go. Doing a quick TED talk, talking to a peer, asking a question in the moment. We do an awful lot of it. And I think a lot of people do this sort of in the flow of work learning and don't always necessarily realize that that's what they're doing. They still think about formal learning, going to a course, being mentored by somebody. But it's that in the flow of work. So doing it in the moment when you need it, but also the second point in that paragraph speaks to doing it at a time that suits you. There's no point scheduling in learning every Friday afternoon if you know that actually by that point in the week you're past it. If you're better in the morning, schedule it then. If you're better after lunch, schedule it then. So again, just really practical things for all of our colleagues to work with. Relevant, making sure essentially that what you need, what you're doing is relevant to you and what you're doing at the moment, because it's the whole use it or lose it thing. If I go away and do a fantastic course and then don't use it for a year, I'm going to have forgotten it all. So making sure that it's suitable for me. And this applies to things like apprenticeships as well. We all know that apprenticeships are very much on the job. You can't do an apprenticeship if you're not doing it. And so it's that sort of principle, making sure that you're going to use it, if not now, but in the very immediate future. And accessible. And we've talked about accessibility and making sure that things are available to people. And if there is a learning need that people have and they identify it and we don't have it, then we have a route in for people to say, this is the learning that I want and can you help me source it? And 9 times out of 10, we can find a requirement. So really about making that available for everybody at the point of need. So just to conclude then, we very much are moving from traditional learning to a overall ethos of helping people develop the skills that they need. When I talk about this, I talked about driving a car. You learn to drive a car, you learn to move the wheel and use the pedals and brake and hopefully not crash into things. You really develop that skill the more you do it. You can't get in a car or read the highway code and then suddenly know how to drive. It's something that you practice and develop over time. So that developing skills ethos. A very strong focus on just-in-time learning, doing it at the point of need, asking and empowering people and giving them the tools to have their own personalized learning journey so that they can help drive their career and their future career and any cross-path careers that they want to do. And also that part about bringing it together, so the PDPs and the horizon scanning, so it's bringing together the demand-led and the future-focused into one approach. That is us in a nutshell, and I will now open it up to questions.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much, Jane. Thank you ever so much, Sharron. Sorry about this, the mistake I made on the slides there, and well covered. Taff, thank you. Any thoughts? Please raise your hand. As I'm sure you know, there's a raise your hand button at sort of the top in the middle. There's the first one. Sharron, welcome. Nice to see you.
Hello, thank you. That was awesome. Thank you very much. I've previously worked in ONS, so I understand the joys and pain of the stakeholders there. I was just wondering, just a couple minutes on, so how do you get this out there? So it's about, of course, colleagues understanding that it's everyone's accountability, not just for their manager to broach a conversation with them. So do you therefore have a strong comms plan, your communications business partners? How do you get it out there so people hear about all this good stuff?
I'll start if that's okay, and then hand over to Jane. As the expression goes, tell them, and tell them again. So every single opportunity. We've recently upgraded our learning management system. We call it the Learning Hub. As you open the Learning Hub, the Skills That Count document is the first thing that you see. So that comes up. If you put learning into our intranet, the first thing that comes up is the Skills That Count. We have also used every single communications method available to us. So we do the HR team, People and Business Services, send out a monthly newsletter to our senior grades, and we've referenced it in that. We ask the people at People Committee to go out and champion and do that piece for us as well. We have capability leads, so effectively a learning business partner embedded in different bits of the business, and they do a lot of the socialization for us. And Jane, do you want to take over about what else we do?
Absolutely. So we also run regular roadshows for employees to really talk to them at the very tactical level about how to access our learning offer, what it means, how it helps them shape the business. So we cover that at our learning roadshows. Sharron mentioned the capability leads. They draw down a lot of the PDP, the personal development plan data, take it back into the business, talk about the importance, ratify what's coming in as demand, so that our stakeholders out in the business understand how our learning need is shaped. So yes, there's a document to read, but we've also got our real ambassadors out there, our capability leads, our HR business partners, my team, really making sure that people say, if the learning package doesn't look right, or it doesn't offer something that you think you need, then here is your way of telling us. So yes, there's you can raise a call, but if there's a demand in the business, this is how we establish it. So yeah, as Sharron said, tell them, and tell them again.
Thanks both. That's a good question, Sharron. What was behind your question, Sharron, out of interest? Were there things that you tried that hadn't quite worked, or is it something you're about to launch, for instance?
No, so I'm a stakeholder of my learning function. So I'm a senior HR business partner in HMRC. So I'm a receiver of this and don't have, I guess, a broader awareness of how that feels for colleagues out in the business to receive the information. So just taking loads of notes to see if any of this can be more helpful to our, we've got a learning transformation program running at the moment. So really helpful. Thank you.
I think I've spoken to somebody in your learning transformation program as well.
Super. Thank you, Jane.
No worries.
Thanks a lot. And moving to Tath. Hello, Tath.
Hi there. Thank you so much. I'm really interested. You've got what I assume is a highly skilled, highly technical workforce. I think you've mentioned difficult stakeholders came up a couple of times. And I'm really curious about getting a sense from you when you go to where the energy is and where the demand is. And you mentioned some emerging kind of tech-based skills. What are the skills of the future that you're hearing loudly and clearly from your stakeholder groups in terms of your statisticians?
Yeah,
and wider workforce.
It's a really interesting one. One of the things that we're seeing at the moment, so live example, digital skills comes up again and again. Change management, digital skills, leading in ambiguity. You want to pick the top three, those are they.
Great, yeah.
But what is interesting for us from making sure that we have the offering. So R and Python, I feel a bit they're like for those of you who are old enough, are like VHS and Betamax. We're not sure which one it's going to go to yet. So we're doing that dual offer. So that's that balance we were talking about what's the current skills and what is about having our future skills provision. The ability to do more and more things with data is so key, but we also have incredibly clever people within our organization who actually will help us. So we have people who, people survey that Jane referenced, we had someone who was interested do an interesting heat map just because they could. And that helps us see if we can leverage on that and showcase. Learning now is so much about curation of learning rather than signposting or delivery. So that's one of the ways in which we are taking digital content and making it more live. And it's encouraging people to explore. It's encouraging people to find ways to do things. And if people come to us, which they do, and say, I found a funky way to do this, we then find a way to amplify that across the learning hub. Jane, anything to add?
Yeah, just into the techie details. So we boiled it down into sort of some technical leadership and people management, and hybrid working skills was the sort of third theme. But in the techie space, it was cloud computing, AI, natural language processing, machine learning, data modeling, programming. So all those things that, again, probably 20 years ago, cloud computing meant something completely different. Those things that we'd never heard of. So very much building it around those.
Did that help, Tath? Did that help, Tath? Oops, sorry. Let's go to Kevin. Thanks, Tath.
Hi, thanks, guys. Yeah, that was really interesting, and I'd be grateful for your view on something that we're trying to introduce in our area at the moment. We're very much focusing on reshaping our learning, so it's based on the 70-20-10 model, rather than just, because we've done a lot of the signposting and that was okay, but it wasn't really giving us a lot of what we wanted. But also we kind of wanted to focus a lot on behaviours as much as skills and technicalities. So I just wondered how, I mean, the big question we always come up with here is, well, how do we quantify the impact of that? How do we measure the quality and how that's benefiting the business? Because as a business partner, I need to go out and say, well, it's good for the business to do this because blah blah blah. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on how you kind of measure those outputs from maybe the softer side to an extent, I suppose.
Jane, all yours.
Yeah. So again, you'll see all the measures when I'm sure Richard will share the document with you. But there are many, basically. Like I said, it comes down to, we've got a few, I talked about our people survey, so we've got some measures that we've pulled out of that. For me, one of the key ones that's actually not included in the, it's not included in the learning and development part of our people survey. It's included in the workload and resources. And one of those is, I have the skills to do my job. And that is one of the measures that I've pulled out, because actually it's not about the attitude and approach to learning. So is the learning available? Tick. Can I access it? Tick. Does it help me develop my career? Tick. It's that translation into, do you fundamentally have the skills to do your job? So we want to improve that outcome, that measure, so that people feel that they are suitably equipped. That for me is one of our biggest measures. But again, when you see the document in full, you will see that we've got very many. Does that help?
Yes, yeah, it does. Thank you. And I know it's we do something similar. We pull a lot from the people survey, because I know you guys get the same thing. And we try and pick up as much as we can on productivity as well. But obviously so much of what we hear is anecdotal as well, and it's kind of how much is that worth, I suppose, almost. But no, that's really useful. Thank you.
We've also got some measures in there around retention, and as I've mentioned before, redeployment. So are we keeping people? Are they feeling that their skills are being effectively used and rewarded? That plays into our exit interviews. And like I said, our ability to move people around when the business changes, that will be a key driver of our skills approach.
Thanks, Kevin.
One of the things that helps us is we've recently introduced what we call stay interviews. So 5 questions that get asked as part of people's quarterly check-ins, and one of them is around, you know, can you do your best work and what do you need to do to help that? And that data, you know, if someone has a really clear learning need, will come into us and we're able to assess that as well. So we're hearing it from all sorts of different places and synthesizing that data, with always the overriding thing of where's the business benefit, because there has to be one.
Great, thank you both.
Thanks, guys.
Do raise a hand for another question. Before another one comes in, I'd like to ask you both, after all the work you've done, you can see the detail. It feels like there's an awful lot of care has gone into this. One example being the fact you've, in terms of comms, you've got the learning business partners attacking it one way, you've got other types of comms going the other, for instance. After doing all that work, what are you most proud of in terms of the impact? What most impact do you think you've made, firstly? And secondly, what slightly, not disappointed you, but you're thinking, oh, we've got more work to do there, and why, would you say?
Great question. Okay, so what I think the thing I'm proudest of is the fact that we have matured our approach. We've really matured how we approach learning and how we track the impact that we have. Oddly, my job title is Head of Learning, Talent and Development, yet often I turn around to people and say learning isn't always the answer, because it's not. It's about that much more mature. I can put on as many courses as you like. I can deliver training up the yin yang, but if we can't measure what it is, we can't identify what the problem we're trying to solve is, and then we can't measure how we've solved it, then there's pretty much no point. So for me, I'm very proud about how we've matured that approach. In terms of what I wish we'd do better, I think, again, we just need to embed it and get it out there and really get people talking about it. And that is still a work in progress, but it needs to be, because it's top of my list. I love it. Of course I do. I'm deeply passionate about it, but I absolutely recognise that out in the workforce, people are doing day jobs and they won't come across this and be as enthused at first as I am.
Yeah, the passion takes time. The passion comes across very much, but the whole thing takes time, doesn't it, to be fair? And Sharon, what would your two be?
So we have a saying in our organisation, which is trust your experts. And we were being quite radical in what we were doing here. We're saying all the traditional ways we do things, face-to-face training, we're reducing it. Learning needs analysis, we're ditching it. And we had an organisation that said, you've researched it. We tested our thinking. We've been quite robust. We had taken our stakeholders with us, but they said, you're the experts. We trust you to do this. You know, our people committee said, crack on. It sounds very sensible to us. And there is something about that. As HR professionals, we know that everyone thinks that they can do HR better than you can, because that's the rules. So it was really great to be in an environment. And I think I'm really proud of that. I'm proud that I work in an organisation that said, you're the experts and we're going to trust you. The thing I would like us to have been further along is the cultural shift for people. So, you know, people are still hankering after that high touch, personalized approach that just doesn't exist in the organization anymore, because of course your learning journey should be personal, but it also should be around you're accessing what you need to learn for your role, future and current. So I'd like it if that changed a bit.
Great. Very good answers. Very relevant. Well, thank you ever so much, both Sharron and Jane. What I suggest we do now is we'll bring the session formally to a close. I'll stop the recording. If anyone has a question for Jane and Sharron, they'd like to stay on the call just the last 5 minutes, please do. Otherwise, really interesting session. I love the work you put into this. We'll send the slides out shortly this afternoon. Apologies to Andrew and others who couldn't see them, but they will be with you shortly. And once again, Sharron and Jane, thank you ever so much. Please do leave us some feedback in the chat.